Hi, everybody. I'm Justine Diamond with the Enable Community Foundation, and we are here for another intern roundtable with our 2016 interns. And today, I think, if you're ready, Garrett, we'll start off with the work that's going
Oh,
on at Autodesk with parametricization of the Phoenix 2. So you were doing some
uh,
really cool things last week,
yeah.
so I'm interested to see what's been up this week.
All right. So, this week I was assigned to find a solution to eliminate the need for screws for the palm mesh because it's just an extra thing to buy. So I was working on these clips, just like these little clips that like when you push them in, they click into the side of the palm, and it just serves as like a different alternative to the screws for the palm mesh. And I still have to work it and integrate it into the palm mesh, but um, that should be the problem for today because I did struggle with finding a solution the to eliminate the screws because the wall thickness is now kept constant because of parametrics at 4.5 millimeters, which is
Okay.
which is pretty thin. And the issue is that it's difficult because you need at least like 1.6 millimeters of clearance, or not clearance, but distance between, so you can have 2 rounds of filament. Oh, Trisha's here. Okay,
Yep.
but that was an issue, and I finally got some working clips that are pretty secure that work out. So it's all
Could
good.
you do me a favor? Could you hold that clip up just one more time
Well,
and just
you
right,
can't see it. Now,
so
this
that's what
is
it would look like already in the palm?
yeah. So the thing is that this is printed flat. Okay, I could show you design on screen share. I'm not sure if that works. I've never tried it before, but
Try
let's
it
see.
and let's see, because I'm a little confused. But I do know that the palm mesh takes something like 13 screws.
Yeah.
So
So
while I found them at a very good price, it's still a lot of screws.
all right. Can you guys see my screen right now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what the screw looks like on the inside, and or the clip looks like on the inside. So basically, when you push it in, it clicks in, and that basically prevents it from sliding out. And there's like a little notch here where it's just easier. So this is printed flat. So the component right here is printed flat, and this is just a prototype, so I only printed out part of it. But this is eventually going to be integrated into the rest of the palm,
Okay.
and then or the palm mesh, and then these clips, right, this area over here is going to be bent up, and then be able to hopefully be able to click into the palm. So if you're imagining that this is a section of the palm, then this would
Right.
click into the palm and eliminate the need for screws. Yeah, I'm going to work
So
on
would
that.
you have to thermoform it
Well, you
to
just
bend
have to
it?
bend it up. Yeah, you just have to bend it up, make sure it's flat. I mean, I
Okay.
might even add like a section over here that's a little thicker so that it stays set while the others are soft, because like the time it takes for PLA to heat up is proportionate to how thick the material is. So yeah, that was the work for this week. I also went through a little bit of um, I modeled a different hand for Andreas in Fusion, if that opens. But it's the Ebuelda hand for
Okay.
the clinic in Haiti, and hopefully it doesn't crash. Yeah, but yeah, so that's the.
Do you have any more information on that hand that you could share for the people who don't know that much about it?
So the Ebuelda hand is basically a very natural looking and very yeah, a natural looking hand that looks like an actual hand. It doesn't move. There's no moving parts right now, but it's basically because um, it's made for so that people can blend in a little better, and so that's what it looks like. So this is the STL file, and I modeled it again like this on Fusion using surface modeling. So ends up looking like that. It's pretty close to the actual thing. And yeah, so I modeled that, and then also there's some patients in Haiti which need resizing for their forearms for this hand. So I went through and I customized the parametric for them so that they could you just enter in the length of their forearm on their good arm and like the circumference of their thickest part of the arm, and it configures a forearm for them. Most of the work was done by Andreas, but I basically just plugged in the numbers and then so that they could have resized forearms for that are specialized to them.
And then this forearm, this hand would attach onto that as a terminal device, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, we export the STLs to them and then send it to them, and then the patients receive the patients in the clinic in Haiti receive their new forearms. So
Very cool.
yeah.
It's a great model, and I know
So,
it's been working well
yeah, but
with what's been
actually,
going on in Haiti.
yeah, but that actually this model was I kind of cheated to make this one. Yeah, a guy at work introduced me to Autodesk Remake, which takes the STL and then converts it into quads, like a quad ball, instead of the triangles that you normally see in STLs, and then takes that and then.
Hang on a second. I'm sorry, because I'm not that technical. Could you
Oh, okay.
explain what you mean, please?
Okay, so basically, so STLs are a bunch of triangles that are like put together, right?
Right, that I
And
know.
so then, and Fusion can't really convert that into a Fusion file because it's kind of like a PDF. You can't go backwards, right? It's kind of difficult to do that. So what Autodesk Remake does is that it takes that files, it takes the STL file and exports it out instead of triangles as squares. And for some reason, Fusion can take care of that. And then I take those squares and then convert that to a T-spline, which then converts into a body, which is what you see right now. Which is, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And
That is pretty cool.
yeah, it improved the workflow a lot, which was interesting. And yeah, so that was the work for this week.
That's really good. Does anybody have any questions for the work that Garrett has done?
Yeah, like, hey Garrett, could you explain more about like this like Autodesk remake thing? So,
Mhm.
so like, based on what I understand, you can convert an STL into this thing, into this like intermediate thing, which can
Mhm.
then be converted into like a body. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool. I mean, the thing is that you just have a little bit more control over your file eventually when you finish. I mean, you can't for like I couldn't do this for the Phoenix hand, the entire Phoenix hand, because I need to control so many little parts of it, so I had to design the whole thing again. But
Oh,
then since this is just like a natural model, then it's easier to I just have a little bit more control over it if I convert it into a Fusion file. And then instead of like modeling the whole thing on surface modeling, which is very difficult because surface modeling is like kind of like so you start out with a box and then you kind of push and pull like it's like clay
yeah,
online, and that's very difficult to get that natural form
yeah.
because you have a lot of folding that ends up kind of messed up. So this was just a cool way that like bypasses that, and yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Neat.
That is pretty awesome. Okay, does anybody have anything else for Garrett? Not right now? All right. Shall we move over to Florida and see what they've been doing down there?
Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Here, we'll get closer over here, I think. Okay. Hi, guys. I'm going to screen share.
Okay.
Uh,
We can see it.
you can see it?
Okay.
Okay. So this week I basically was changing the scaling and the sizing of things, and I came up with this idea that instead of me creating another scaling chart and redoing all the scaling work that was already done in the limited arm, I could just change the original 100% scaling to that, the limited arm. So all I really needed to do was change the width and the length of it to be the same as the original 100% unlimited arm. And then theoretically, and it seems to be working so far, it should work. So you can use the same scaling chart that they have and just put in the length of your other arm, and it'll come out the same. So then I also changed the elbow joint to be the same as the limited arm, just for, I don't know, just because I thought it would work better, and it has been working better. And then there's a little bit of design change in the cuff, but that's just because I was remaking it and didn't want to do the same thing again, so I just put some hexagons in there. Let's see. Yeah, so here we have them side by side. So this is mine, this is the unlimited arm, this is mine, this is the unlimited arm. Just you can see the size change, and then I did scale one up that I printed out today to 120%, and it's pretty much the same. It's virtually the same, so it should be the same theoretically. And for you guys who aren't familiar with the scaling chart, this is what it looks like. And it's really simple, it's really awesome. All you have to do is take 3 different measurements off of the person's arm, and then it'll come out with a hand that is supposed to fit them and also supposed to be the same length as their other arm. And so that's another thing that I was encountering, was that for mine, I don't necessarily want it to be the same exact length, because you're going to have a piece of PVC on the end, and you're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 inches on the end of that. And so you don't want this ungodly huge device on the end of your arm that has an extra 5 inches on it. And so what I'm probably going to end up doing in my design is just taking off an inch at the 100% scale and then seeing how it scales up from there, and seeing if that makes it a little bit better, a little bit more elegant, I guess. And then due to printing problems, my jig didn't print out, but I have good hopes for this week. And one of the reasons it didn't print is because we've had a lot of printer problems, especially with temperature this week. And then this is a really large jig, and that's because my idea is that you print it once, you can use it for all the devices that you're making. And so it takes like 4 hours to print at 0% infill, so it's going to take a little bit. And then so stuff to do this week. I'm ordering the Velcro replacement, which I'm pretty confident in. I don't think I'm going to have any problems with. And just a reminder is that belt that has the 2 hinges on it, you can just pull it back with 1 arm. And then I'm going to make it pretty. I'm going to make it aesthetically pleasing, hopefully add some cool designs to it and stuff. And then once I'm done with that stuff, I'm going to set up my official recipient testing and get some actual feedback from someone who knows it best. And then a little bit more down the road, as like an end goal, I'd like to have either whether it's an Instructable or my like official turn-in thing, I kind of want to have just a catalog of different attachments that people can download really easily. So it'll just make it more pleasing for people to download, I guess, because if you're just downloading the original files for the device, you have nothing to put on it, no one's really going to be enticed to do that, I guess. So that's my plan. And then another small little factor is that when I change the scaling down, let's see. So this piece right here is the piece that the length of it is supposed to be the circumference of 1-inch PVC. Because when I was originally modeling, I was going off of my actual sizes of my arm, and I would fit 1-inch PVC because I had a longer arm. But when I scaled it down to be 100%, which would be ideally like a small child, like 7 or 8, I decided to change this to the circumference of 1/2-inch PVC. And so that creates kind of an interesting problem as you're scaling it up between like 130 and 150, I guess. You're going to be this in between where it's not really 1-inch PVC and it's not really 1/2-inch, but it'll still fit. And based off our testing with actual screws and bolts, it'll still hold on really nicely. But basically that just means that all the attachments, I'll just make them twice, 1 for 1/2-inch and 1 for 1-inch. So it's not like a huge deal, just a little something.
So I have a question for you with the jig. If you could just go back to the slide with the jig. Is there anything else you could use that's not printed that would be easier so that you're not tied down to the fact that you're having the printer problems?
I mean, yeah, we'd gone over the like dowels and stuff before, but I think
because you had talked about that.
Yeah.
I was
but-
wondering too if you had anybody there with a lathe that could just turn a piece of wood to the right size for you. I mean, that wouldn't help everybody. You'd still need a file or something.
Okay.
But I'm just thinking to try and give you a solution.
He's saying that we do have that, and that we could do it.
Yeah, we'll mess around with that this week.
Because when we did our first unlimited arm here, that's exactly what we did. We made a dowel. We put wood on the put a thing on the lathe and turned it to the size we needed.
Okay,
And that worked really well. And then we've kept it to use for that particular size. But obviously, but with yours, I don't think you have as much of that sizing issue. So it might be that something like that would help you, at least in the short term, so that you're not tied down to waiting for something that's large to print, or if you're having a printer problem.
Yeah.
We have that around the campus. It's just a matter of tracking it down and bringing a block of wood in there one day.
And getting someone who knows how to how to do it.
Yeah, a lot of the times they have techs who are around, so we'll track that down.
Because we could do it, but we're sort of far away.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. So right now this is it, and this only has one bolt in it, but it's like it doesn't move at all. It's really nice. I really like how the fit is coming in. I'm still having some angle issues with here, where I want to get like a super nice glide of your elbow, and that's just a matter of getting the jigs to line up, essentially, when I'm thermoforming them. Yeah.
And if this becomes a real issue for you, if you send me an email with the details of what you need, we'll turn it here and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So if you get really stuck, let me know, and I'll see what I can do for you from here.
Yeah. Sweet.
Okay.
What's up?
Nope. Go on. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that also this week. So I made the elbow joint pretty quickly. I just wanted to look and like take a closer look at the elbow joints here, because I know they have like some protrusions coming up, and I was just wondering if anyone knew what exactly all the details on it were for, like if they're aesthetic or if they're actual for function. So like what I'm talking about is that it like
Just
comes
hold it up a bit.
little bit.
'Cause you need to hold it up. There you go.
Yeah. So it comes up at the elbow joints. Like if you can see, it's the same depth, and it just protrudes up. So I didn't put that on mine, and it seems to be working okay, but I didn't know if there's a reason that it was there.
See how it.
Is that down to giving it additional strength at a weak point?
Could be.
Because on the regular gauntlets, when we do the flat at the hinge, you put additional material there because that makes it very strong, and because you can print it around as opposed to this way, and it adds strength. So they may have done that to give additional strength, because that's such a point of stress.
Yeah, and then also, I guess that's probably the same thing, but they had the same protrusions going around where the Velcro slots are.
Yeah, I think that might be what that's just to give it additional strength.
Yeah, it just needs sliding over it a lot. Okay, that's it from me.
Has anybody got any questions or comments or feedback?
Oh, do you want me to talk about the guitar project too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to see the guitar arm video?
Yeah, so we here at GRIP, I guess, which is like the UF club, have a lot of projects going on right now, and one of the side projects, it's like one of our first ventures into electronics, but it's basically to have an EMG sensor hooked up to chords and guitar, and so when you flex your arm, you'll be able to play the chart.
That was a first try. And then, which one did I get? This one, I think. This is the most recent. So that's our 3D printing tech, John, who can't play the guitar. We expect it'll sound better, but the idea would be, we'll get the actual fingers to line up with the strings a little bit better and maybe get the fit right. But I'm going to start a senior design project this year that actually hooks up some of the sensors and does more of the muscle control of those servos instead of just having them on a timer programmed. So that's another thing that will be at the end of the year one of our goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're just like at GRIP trying to think of things that have fine motor skills, I guess, in ways to solve them. Yeah, I have.
Oh.
Eric. The one that looks like a minion and has some minor changes.
Yeah.
Right. So that's they've parametricized the design.
Oh.
So I don't know if you've seen that. I think now they have. You can put in the dimensions and it spits out the file.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, we'll take another look at that. We both kind of saw it on Thingiverse and then
Didn't really.
said, hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
That looks really cool
Yeah.
aesthetically, but Thingiverse customizer.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
I'll make sure it's easy to find. It's right on Thingiverse. A couple of days ago, it was the featured item, as a matter of fact, which was pretty cool. Okay, that looks pretty cool. All right, I guess moving on, unless anybody else has anything for you two, and just hang out. We'll see if anyone does. Trisha, you ready? You and Eric?
I'm all
right,
we're all
good.
All right, so I'm going to screen share. All right, can you guys see my screen?
We can.
Great. So this is an update, but also I wanted to make sure that I kind of gave a project overview. This is something that Dr. Eric really had emphasized, just because we are quite into the project and kind of need to circle back to what we were originally trying to solve. So the project goals were just measuring the grip strength of each of the most popular hand designs. We wanted to do the Raptor Reloaded, the Phoenix, and the Osprey. We wanted to quantify the efficiency between input grip force and output grip strength, and quantify if there was a difference between hand designs or tensioning mechanisms like the Whipple trees versus the 3-pin tensioners. We also wanted to see if tying the tension to be resting at a different angle. We mentioned this earlier, how they sit naturally at 30 degrees. We wanted to see if maybe tying at something around 45 degrees would make a difference. We want to complete grip pattern tests to see where the forces are the most effective using the Theraputty, and then move on to performing our functionality testing. So our requirements of this were that we really want to keep everything really, really simple. We wanted to make sure that people could replicate what we're doing really easily. We wanted to make sure that if somebody wanted to see it for themselves, there wasn't a lot of jargon, that they could just pick it up and do it. And that tests were going to be completed on the fully assembled hands, that no disassembly should be done, to really test the hands as is. So our first project goal was about the input forces and grip strength, and so our question was, how do we close a fully assembled hand and measure the input force? So I created the 3D printed pulley that was designed to redirect the closing force out of the back of the hand, and then using a force sensor, we could easily attach it to the string that would use to pull the pulley to measure the force. Our next goal was to measure the output force. So measuring the output force to quantify grip strength, well, that's already been done many, many times. The dynamometers are usually the standard, but these hands were too weak to use dynamometers. So that led us to a new question about, can we use a modified blood pressure cuff to get these measurements? And we did. And what we found was that an input force of around 14 newtons and an output force of 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury were something we found across the board. We're going to calibrate these millimeters of mercury measurements to a more traditional force unit like the Newton, to get an idea kind of in real language about what that means for us. But we were able to solve both of these problems. Sounds really easy in hindsight, but it took quite a bit of thinking. But we found that each of the hands that we're testing are all right around that same level. So that led us to our next project goal, which is the differences in design. So this week I focused on sized 1.3 hands. So I used a Phoenix, a Raptor Reloaded, and then it happened to be a Phoenix hand with the Whipple tree as the tensioning system. But the other two hands used a 3-pin tensioner. So right here on the left is the before image, and then on the right is the after image of the grip. And then this e-NABLE bookmark is just to give an idea of scaling. And I was on travel, and so I wasn't able to have any graph paper with me, so I used something of ours instead. And so I re-rolled the Theraputty each time, just to get an idea. That way we weren't using this cylinder to measure, you know, the hand grip after 3-4 tries. That I really tried to make sure that we were being consistent with what we were measuring. And so you can see that the Phoenix hand left a pretty good grip inside. You can clearly see each of the fingers and left pretty good indentation. Even the strings got pressed into the putty a little bit. I will figure out how to upload this to the sandbox so everyone can take a look at this in more detail.
The yellow was very soft.
This was it was the tan. It looks yellow in the photos, but this is the extra soft. Just to give it very quick and easy measurements, the black does not photograph very well. That's also the toughest it comes. So I wanted to pick something that could give us clear, easy results with kind of little fussing with it.
And this is the Phoenix with the 3-pin tensioner.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so you can see that this gave really good finger impressions, and so that the cylinder width changed from where it was before. There will be some variability, we'll see in a little bit, and I'll explain some more of that. But if you look at the Phoenix with the Whipple tree, instead of the 3-pin tensioner, we actually see less of an imprint, but more of a, the putty, for lack of a better word, was squished more, and so the length changed more than the finger's imprint. So there was still a pretty clear imprint. There was some difficulty with tying this. I'm not terribly familiar with Whipple trees, and so we're going to keep retesting this, especially to monitor wear and tear. But the Whipple tree gave some interesting results, so I'm going to keep back and keep testing this particular design on the Theraputty and see. But what I found initially was that the couple tests that the index and middle finger are the ones pressing into the putty the most, and the ring and the the ring and the pinky finger are not pressing nearly as much. And then the Raptor Reloaded with a 3-pin tensioner also gave a clear imprint. This is where the index and middle fingers were, and again, not as significant with the ring and pinky fingers, but there is a good impression, but also the length of the Theraputty did increase pretty significantly. So the differences in the tensioning mechanism, we wanted to determine if this would actually change anything. And what we found is that there was no significant difference between the 3-pin tensioner and the Whipple tree tensioners. If anything, the Whipple tree was a little less, it didn't give as significant of impressions as the 3-pin tensioners did. Each hand, though, was pretty similar in the impressions regarding depth and change in surface area. But if we go back to the Whipple tree, this was the most faint of these particular trials. So interesting, not what I expected, but we're going to come back and keep retesting these. But then we also want to see if the tensioning mechanism really would make any significant difference, like I said. So like we said, the Whipple tree really hasn't changed a whole lot. But then we wanted to see if the tensioning angle was going to change. So on the left here is where it originally sits at the 30 degrees, and on the right is when I changed the tensioning angle to be at 45 degrees. And so this is something we had discussed at one of the events. It was a MedStar event in Georgetown, and we were wondering if changing this to 45 degrees instead of 30 would increase the depth, the impressions, increase grip strength. And what I found, even before I started taking impressions, that yes, there was a difference. So this is the original impression at 30 degrees. And if you look at the 45 degrees, not only did the length expand for the Phoenix with the 3-pin tensioner, but the impressions were also very clear, if not the same, but that the length of the putty changed more so. So saying that means that the grip, in fact, was a little bit stronger. If we're seeing, even if the grip pattern, the depth is still the same, if the surface area length is changing, that means that there's a deeper grip. The Phoenix with the Whipple tree, this was something I suspect was a mistrial. There was, I think, a knot that came loose or something. This definitely was not a good impression, but the Whipple tree gave me quite a bit of trouble, so I'm going to have to kind of come back to it. But at the 30 degrees, that was our clear pattern, but then it really faded around the 45 degree change. So I have to come back and try that again. I don't think that's fully accurate, but I don't expect it to be at the same depth impression with the 3-pin tensioners that we saw earlier. And then the Raptor Reloaded with the 3-pin tensioner at 30 degrees versus it being at 45 degrees. We can also see some more length in the 45 degrees. and we still get a clear impression, and all 4 fingers are clearly impressed, whereas it fades a little bit around here, if you can see my cursor, at the 30 degrees. So there definitely was a difference between the 30 and 45 degree angle tensioning. So by changing the angle from 30 to 45 degrees, the closed position would coincide with the wrist being in a neutral position. And I suspect this is much more comfortable than that hyperflexion we see when we try on the hands and use them ourselves. The new tensioning angle did increase the depth of the impressions left in the Theraputty. For the most part, there was kind of that outlier with the Whipple tree. I think this is because the hands, once in the closed position, can be pushed a little bit farther past because the wrist still has plenty of range to bend. This also could help prevent overuse injuries because it's a more comfortable position. That 45-degree angle position should be comfortable enough for daily use without creating any other overuse injuries. So I think the 45 degrees, what we found, was pretty successful. And then the tensioning angle did help increase the depth of the impressions left in the Theraputty, again, with the exception of the Whipple tree. If you go back to slide 11, it made hardly an impression. So we believe the Whipple tree has equal or even less function than the 3-pin tensioning system. We're going to continue to retest the hand and see if this is consistent or if it was just kind of an outlier. Once in the closed position, we can keep pushing the wrist, and so we're going to keep pushing it and see as far as we can push the hand with the new angle without breaking anything. So measuring grip strength doesn't tell us where the grip is the strongest, and this is where our Theraputty testing came in. But we can test this through Theraputty because it's very easy to use. And so just a very physical, visual inspection of where the fingers imprint tells us a lot about where the grip strength comes from. So we can customize the mass of the putty. Each tub is about 2 ounces, as well as customize what shape the hands grip. So I chose a cylinder for this particular set of testing, but we can also create cubes, spheres, really anything we feel like we want to see. It's not a precise science because there's too much variability in putty shape changing to standardize. That's why I re-roll the putty after each impression because I want to try and minimize any error as I can. I want to make sure to standardize it as much as possible. But we can get useful views of the hands, of where the hands are their strongest, and we found that the index and the middle fingers are the strongest in each of the hand designs. Our Theraputty testing can also give OTs and PTs a really good view of how the hands imprint, which is what many of them use in their rehab process. So we're trying to test in a language that PTs and OTs can relate to usefully so they can use in their own practice, especially if they get patients that are going to be using our hands. It's great to have it already set up in the language that they would like to see it in. So we're going to go on after quantifying grip to conduct a variety of functionality tests that the OTs and PTs are curious about. For example, can a Phoenix hand pick up a cup? Can the Raptor reloaded hand wash a dish? Can one do something better than the other? So we're going to be assembling our list of tasks. We're going to really see the limitations of the hands, but also where their strengths are. What can they do really well? Because I'm sure there are things that they excel at. So our findings, we haven't found any quantitative difference between the various designs, so there may be a little reason to prefer a design in terms of input force to get an output grip. Each hand, regardless of the tensioning system, gives around the same input force of 15 newtons and an output force of 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury and have similar depth impressions. Each design focuses on the use of the index and middle fingers. Choice of design should be motivated by comfort and aesthetics. Functionality appears identical. And we're going to be monitoring wear and tear as we progress to see if there's a degradation of functionality. I noticed that before I started testing yesterday that there was already some serious wear and tear on the bands, and so I replaced those. So now we're going to kind of keep them where they're at, see if the strings do get stretched out, see if we need to replace the dental bands. And we're also going to see if we can figure out how often the parts need to be replaced, especially because we'll be running them through day-to-day tests, things that you would be using hopefully in your everyday life, and we'll see what really makes them stop working the way they should. So that's what we have. I know it was kind of a lot. We kind of I'm trying to stop screen sharing. Okay, can you see me now?
We're seeing you now.
Okay, great. So we're just kind of going to see where it goes from here. I know we've had a lot. I know we talked about a lot, but we're really starting to get into the heart of the research, and I was really excited that we were able to start changing the tensioning angle, and that was really exciting just to see initially, without even putting Theraputty in there, of how the hands would change. So we'll keep you updated with that as well. But that's all I have for this week, and we'll let you know how it goes throughout the week.
That all sounds really good. I'm very interested in that angle, the difference between the 30 and the 45, because I'm very interested to see how that goes. On the Whipple tree versus the 3-pin tensioner, you had said you thought some of the reasons you might be seeing some differences is because you're kind of new to how to tie all the Whipple tree.
Yeah, I mean,
what I'd like to do, if you're okay with that, is I'll put you in touch with JD, with John Diamond, who did some of the work on that. If he can either do a conference with you or some demonstrations to make sure that you've done it the way he does it, so that we're sure that it's apples to apples.
Exactly.
Just to make sure. I mean, I don't know if it would change the results, but I know that he'd be happy to do that and help you out. And if you haven't really done it and worked with that, I know I have a terrible time tying them and getting them right. And I'll do them and he'll redo them. So I will hook you guys up. I'm sure that he will be interested to help with that.
No, that would be great. It was, Dr. Eric had tied that particular hand in the beginning, so that 30-degree measurement I had was tied correctly. It was really when I started feeling with the 45 is where I ran into some trouble, just because tying the phoenixes already is difficult for me, and so I don't doubt that there was definitely some human error, which is frowned upon in research, but there's definitely some error on my part in that.
But that's important to know too.
And so,
but we'll do that just so that.
And because I'd really like to see if the Whipple trees are consistent. They could be better. That's why we didn't really make any definitive conclusion, but it is something to keep in mind at least initially. Dr. Eric also said in the comments over there the link to show the details of the blood pressure cuff approach to grip string, which is something I went over with Kristen Akil last week afterwards. But if anyone needs to. If anyone needs to read that, but also Dr. Eric was also saying he's going to supervise the Whipple testing, which I think is definitely a good idea. So
yes, that's a good idea. And what I'll do after this is I'll send out an email to Eric and to you and John, and you guys can coordinate. And I think that would be really good. And then if you could upload that PowerPoint to the sandbox, that would be really good so everyone could take a look at those slides. I think those results and the fact that you can quantify a lot of that is fantastic. I think it's going to be good. All right. Aside from me having all these questions, does anybody else have any questions for Tricia or any comments?
I realized I was muted. So Tricia, could you do like get an array of like a softball, a tennis ball, and stuff like that, and just do, I don't know, like a throw test, or I don't know, I'm kind of just thinking off the cuff here, but it might be useful to just know something that's a common object that people can understand. A golf ball, is that too small? Is that going to slip out, and things like that?
Yeah, a couple of those things are going to be in our functionality testing. So we're going to use one of those like really squishy balls, use the pool. We're going to use a couple of those things and test the hands and see if they can grip those. So we'll keep you updated with that. If there's anything you really want to see, like you said, like a softball or a golf ball, just like send us an email with whatever you have, and we can grab it, and then we'll try and test it.
Okay.
All right. So I guess we will move over to Kristen Akil.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Howdy. Hello, everyone.
So how's it been going this week?
It's been going pretty well this week. Yeah.
Finally.
So we basically revamped a lot of our approach to this. So like as we mentioned last week, we had some trouble with the sensors. like mainly because like there were some technical issues with the electronics that we weren't quite able to figure out. So like we basically adopted a similar approach to what Trisha just talked about. So we basically also are looking at the force efficiency. So let me screen share first, so then you guys can see. This one? Which one?
Google.
This one?
That.
This one?
Yeah.
That's the other one. Hold on. Give us 1 second, sorry.
That's okay.
Then if you do, well, let me try. This one. This one. Okay, can you see the
Yep.
presentation? Cool.
We can.
Okay, great. So basically, we're also looking at the force efficiency in the same way that that like we just heard about. And so what we did here is that like what we have is we basically have like a paddle, which can be driven by like a motor, and so we can control the angle to which the hand is, the angle to which we can close the hand, and so what we did before we began testing is that we tensioned at each one of the hands. We tensioned this one so that the hand will be closed at about 20 degrees. And so, like as you can see here, when the hand is when the hand is flexed 20 degrees, it's open. And so because our hands close in the opposite manner that the other e-NABLE hands do, here, if the paddle were to extend back, then it would close at around 20 degrees away from neutral. So then we basically hooked up it's almost like a spring scale at the bottom. You guys can see where my mouse is right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the scale, we basically tied off the strings onto the hook on the scale, and then we rotated the hands back by like increments of 5 degrees. So 0 over here is basically completely. So this is at like the neutral position, and so like we did increments of like 5 from -10, which would be 10 degrees of flexion, to 30, which is 30 degrees of extension, and we found that that like so the measurement we're mainly interested is at around 20 degrees because we talked to a doctor and she basically said that her patients have like a functional range of about like 20 degrees of motion. So if you look at this point at like 20 degrees, we found that like the force that the patient needs to exert to close the hand is about 12 newtons. And we also found that it takes about like 6.3 newtons to keep the hand in like a neutral position because the hands are naturally tensioned. They naturally rest at about like 20 degrees of flexion. And so, and also one interesting thing we found is that there's a linear relationship between like the degree and the force. And so that's what we tested with one hand, and so like overall we're going to be testing across different hand designs to see how that changes, and so this can provide us a way to quantify between hand designs.
Mm-hmm. So that's one half of the equation. The other half is measuring the force that the hand generates for a given degree of flexion. So Trisha has a method of doing this that uses a blood pressure cuff. Unfortunately, our hands, we tried using it. The hands we create don't have enough strength, or they're not large enough to really make that work effectively. So we had to get kind of creative. We cut off the pressure gauge from the blood pressure cuff and connected it to a balloon that was partially inflated and superglued onto this airline tubing. This reads naturally a pressure of about 20 millimeters of mercury, and then from there, as you squeeze the balloon, that pressure will increase. As you can see, our force out, our force out follows a similar linear trend to the force in, where the further the hand is flexed, the more force it can generate, up to a strength of about 0.8 newtons. It's not a whole lot, but this is also a fairly small hand. It's a 77% scaled hand. So obviously the larger the hand, the more force you're able to generate. And to find the force to convert it from pressure, you have to find the surface area that your hand is connecting with the balloon, and then multiply by that scalar factor. So when you put them together, we combined the two rigs, the force out and the force in, to give us a kind of quantitative look at what happens at each degree of flexion in increments of 5. So from 0 to 30 degrees, we're able to see the force efficiency between what it takes to flex the hand and what kind of force you can get out of it. So as you can see, it's a sort of logarithmic, or it kind of levels out at about 5% efficient, which means that it requires about 20 times more force to put into the hand as what you get out. And what we're really looking at this for is comparing different styles of hand or different methods of printing the hand. So currently this hand that we tested has a 70% infill. We have another that has half that infill at 35%, and another hand that has a thicker hinge for the fingers, and finally a fourth one that has a different material with a less flexible filament. And our goal is to figure out sort of a range between how much force it takes to close each hand and how much force you get out. And what we can do with that is then, we kind of mentioned this last week, but as a patient progresses in his or her strength of their wrist, they can have hands that generate more force but also require more force to use. And this will both strengthen their muscles in an area that would otherwise be very difficult for them to exercise, as well as give them the ability to hold more objects or for a longer period of time without tiring. So this is kind of the preliminary results for one hand, and we'll be able to compare this to other ones as we continue to test. So that's what we've been up to. Let's see, stop sharing. All right, can you guys see us again?
We can see you again.
All right.
So I'm just going to mute you guys while I talk, because otherwise I'm hearing an echo while I ask a question. So how, Tricia, how does the kind of results that they're getting compare to what you're finding? Or because it's a different operating hand, is it not really comparable?
Yeah, I mean, what I was seeing in our research, we found somewhere between 2 and 4 millimeters of mercury that we would find using our method. Our hands are also a little bit bigger, so they fit. I don't know much about each of these things. Dr. Eric is saying that we have some kind of input force to get the grip closed. Ours caps out at about 15 newtons. So I guess it's comparable. I think it's really clever how you guys figured out a solution. I think when you said like super glue, I was like, I'm in. This sounds great. So, that sounds really cool. Dr. Eric is saying that ours is the same as yours. So I guess it's just fine. So well done. Good improvising.
That's really good.
Yeah, so we had to use the balloon because we tried the cuff in a couple of different methods, and what happens with our hands, especially on the rig, is the cuff is too heavy and will actually fall off or impact the angle that you're moving through. So it works really well for the, I think for what you guys are doing, but with our rig that we have, it doesn't. We're not able to get that same kind of like accurate data.
Because like one problem we found is that so in order to get the hands to close, the motor has to provide the Arduino has to like provide a current into the motor, and that basically causes the motor to spin. But if you add like the cuff has to be attached to like a rod, and like the rod has like extra weight, especially the one that we use. It was like really heavy, and so like we found that exceeded the capacity of the motor. So the hands, like when you tell the hand to rotate by like 10 degrees, it'll like only rotate by 6 or 7, and that has to do with the extra load that's being added onto the motor.
Mm-hmm. So then our options were kind of find a way to shift our rig so it was horizontal and the hands were horizontal, in which case we could basically do exactly what you guys had done, or just kind of make a less cool solution. with a balloon. So that's what we did.
And so another, actually, like one thing that like we realized with the balloon, at least we hypothesized, is that the balloon could also be useful because you can like inflate it to different sizes. So when you want to compare across different hands, then you can basically inflate it and be able to like standardize the object that you're trying to hold relative to the hand in which you're trying to hold it with, and like that's, I guess, a useful thing to look at. Although one
it works
problem,
with the cuff too.
yeah, it does
It
work
would
with the
work
cuff
either
as
way
well.
because it's the same principle.
And so one thing that we did notice at first with the balloon is that as you hold like one part, another part would get like deflected out, and so that basically is basically a loss of like the force that we're applying. So to fix that, we just wrapped two balloons and like we put like one inside the other, and that was basically the entire solution there.
And then you keep it fairly deflated so that if you stretch the balloon out a lot, so to where it's pretty much all the way inflated, then a large amount of force is required to get a change in pressure because a lot of it's going into maintaining the surface tension of the balloon. So if you keep it less inflated, it actually gives you a better reading. Interesting. But we also, before we converted to newtons, had about the same. I think the maximum we got was about 3 millimeters of mercury pressure difference. But then when you convert that to force with the surface area, it changes the force that you get out.
Okay. That's it's very interesting that you got similar results, and I think that was a pretty innovative thing that you guys came up with to get around the problems you were having with the other rig. And I love the idea of cutting it off and putting a balloon on. I'm like, yeah, that's innovative. That's really exciting.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Has anybody got anything else for today? Then I have just one thing for you, Tricia. Again, with the 3-pin system versus the Whipple tree, one of the differences between the two, aside from grip strength, is that the Whipple tree balances the forces completely between the two sets of fingers. And I'm just wondering if there's any way to see if there's anything else that proves as a benefit, or if that doesn't really make a difference at all. But I'm not sure what kind of test you can do to see if there's some benefit to that.
Yeah, we'll look into that and let you know. Yeah, we'll keep that in mind.
Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'll talk to Dr. Eric and we'll figure it out. And we'll see what we can do.
Okay, that sounds good. And like I said, I'll send out that email and hook you up so that we can get that other stuff taken care of.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it for this week. We'll all be back next week with another update. Until then, everybody, happy printing. Bye-bye.